Alright, hello everybody, Interjection here, and before we get into this, I will warn you now that this video is an absolutely enormous balance discussion, because for the last few days now, me and a few other players have been going through the entire collection, and rebalancing lots and lots of cards. There's a few nerfs in there to some of the more overpowered ones, but mostly it's just buffs we've been doing to the cards that are perhaps not that good, and could see a bit of a treatment, if you know what I mean. So I'd like this video to kind of serve as an open letter to Jagex, particularly the people at Jagex who are in charge of rebalancing RuneScape Chronicle, because in one of the blogs they said for the next 6 or 7 weeks we will rebalance between 10 and 20 cards per week, and they weren't able to do it weekly. It was changed by the sounds of it to just all in one go. So I'd like to get my 2 cents in there and sort of say why I think different cards need changing, and this is coming from somebody who's finished top 10 a few times, and I've had input from other people who have also finished top 10 a few times. So I guess I don't want to sound pretentious, but like, I mean, we've been playtesting it in Tabletop Simulator here, and it's actually been really fun. And I think this patch would be good to go, honestly. I mean, certainly they're not just going to put every card in, and I'm not saying they should. This really is just giving the reasoning as to why I think different cards are overpowered, and I hope that does kind of influence maybe some decisions, not necessarily all of them or even very many of them, but I want this to be out there because I really like the game, and I'd like to, I just want to, I don't know, I find this kind of thing interesting. So we'll drag these card piles over here and get right into it. We'll start with Ariane because I think she's the most interesting, but also, A is alphabetical. A for Ariane, I suppose, but actually starting at the back of the alphabet, we do indeed have Zamorakian Occultist, which I haven't changed. I think this is a fine card. It's perfectly fair. It's certainly not the best card, but that's probably where cards should be in Chronicle, right? Somewhere between fair and not the best. And maybe that's the wrong way to phrase it, but you know what I mean. Like, there's cards in the collection that need much more pressing attention, such as Wise Old Man, one of the Ariane class diamonds, which isn't very exciting, right? Let's compare this to Corporeal Beast, Barricade, and, some of the other class diamond cards out there, right? Wise Old Man just isn't impactful enough, it doesn't do enough. So the change here, I have reduced its cost by 2. That's the only change we have done. I think there was a number of problems with Wise Old Man, and this effect is not hugely useful, to be honest. It's not that good. And why is that? Well, let's think. Where would this effect be good? What kind of deck? We'd have to build some kind of deck that ran lots and lots of creatures, lots of big creatures, right? Ones that will kill you if you don't have Wise Old Man, because the ones that won't kill you are perhaps not as good. And the decks that run those cards are, I guess, an AP sustain, win in the final fight style deck, right? But Ariane's not very good at that, right? She doesn't really have the tools for it. What she does have the tools for is striking. So strike Ariane. Stuff like Ketzek, maybe oozing Calphite, Black Demon, right? Not that all of those cards are the best kind of ones you'd want to be killing with Wise Old Man. I mean, like, Black Demon, you kind of need to have high base attack for that to be worthwhile anyway, because of the strike. So Wise Old Man is not going to be that useful for killing that. So there's some more problems, as you can see, with Wise Old Man in that style of deck. But also, and I think more importantly, it wouldn't go in that deck because I think those sort of AP creature-based decks, they don't want to run gold. It's going to be very, very tough for them to have enough gold early on at least, or consistently have enough gold early on at least, to get Wise Old Man off. Like, 5 gold's quite expensive, and you can only run 1 in the deck because it's a diamond. It's not a consistent or useful reach tool, and that's the problem there, right? Also, it requires a damn load of setup, because if you want to get optimal value out of this, you have to play 4 cards in that chapter. That's Wise Old Man and 3 creature cards. So the maximum your hand size could be is 6 cards. So that's 6 damage Wise Old Man will do to all of them, which again is, I guess, okay with Jad and Ketzek. So you see, it's not far off. There is a use for it. It's just expensive. And, no way you're going to run that in an AP strike deck, because, Goblin Guy, Sergeant Slimetoes, Tormented Demon, Count Draenor, Crawling Hand, all of these things exist, and they're much, much cheaper, much more consistent ways to kill those big creatures and sort of ramp up into the game. Wise Old Man is just not good enough there. But, okay, those, Wise Old Man doesn't fit into those decks. Maybe we're thinking about it wrong. Maybe Wise Old Man, maybe you have to build a deck around him. Maybe there's a Wise Old Man deck, and you build the deck around him rather than putting Wise Old Man into an existing deck. Okay, let's think. What deck would Wise Old Man go into right now? Probably some kind of aggro deck. I mean, like, maybe you have 1 base attack or 3 base attack, and you go around killing creatures that deal damage, and maybe give you gold, right? Or maybe both at the same time. That would be ideal. And then you use that gold that you've been collecting, spend it on Wise Old Man, and then he lets you cheat out some massive creature like Ketzek or using Calphite, and then you deal lots more damage. The problem with that, though, is you have to run those big janky cards in your deck, and there's no way you can run enough of them to make Wise Old Man consistent enough, because those cards are going to kill you, right? If you draw them all on Chapter 1, you're going to be pretty sad, and then you're not going to do anything on Chapter 1, or maybe your Chapter 2 will be underwhelming or something like that, and you just get behind, right? Wise Old Man is really difficult to kind of put in a deck at its current cost. I think 3, it would be a lot more playable, but I also think even at 3, it needs more targets. Let's go back to the idea of a 1 AP deck, right? The only meaningful card in the game currently for that archetype of being on 1 base attack is Wind Surge. And this isn't even the reason people go down to 1 base attack. People go down to 1 base attack because Penguin Sheep is overpowered, and they really want 5 gold. And they want the 5 gold for Earth Blast and Earth Wave and Miracle Ariane, effectively, right? That big burst you out style, that's much, much more favorable currently. And that's because I think there's just not enough support for that 1 base attack style. And I think Wise Old Man really could be the support needed for that style. So what I mean by that, and I mentioned we need more targets, is in this pile, I've changed a bunch of the creature cards to have alternative effects if you're on 1 base attack. I just think this 1 base attack, deal damage consistently, whittle them down, like traditional aggro style, is not good enough in Ariane and just needs a bit of a buff. So I've given lots of alternative effects. So it says, does what it normally does, what it would ordinarily do, but it has an extra effect on top of it if you're on 1 base attack. Because, currently, Wind Surge, and I guess Skelly Mage, but that's really not very strong. Wind Surge is the only card in the game that's even meaningful or relevant when you're on 1 base attack, and I just think that's pretty sad. Wind Strike, I really like this card. It's just a vanilla 3 health. Pretty cool, doesn't need changing. Same for Wizard Mind Bomb, really nicely balanced, I think. Unholy Cursebearer, right? Now, moving into a different a different topic, I suppose, of Ariane. We'll get back on what I was mentioning with Wise Old Man and base attack, but I'm doing this in... The order I'm doing this in is actually semi-random. The first few cards I ordered, but the rest are not. I wanted to keep Unholy Cursebearer in the form that it is currently in. Like, I think at the moment, this is a huge creature, and it does a huge amount of damage to you when you kill it. So, almost all of the time, this is way too punishing, or if you don't want it to be punishing, requires so much investment that it's, like, very difficult to play. Let's ignore the fact that people want to play Crawling Hand into this, because if you want a Crawling Hand into an 8/13, you deserve to be on only a couple of life. You can do that and you survive, and it's insane if you manage to heal up afterwards, because 3 base attack on Chapter 1 is absolutely outrageous. But, that's, I think, okay, I think you should be able to do that, like, Crawling Hand into it, but I think, like, the amount of damage you take is fine. It's the problem is when you 2-hit kill this. Let's say you're being a bit more sensible, you have 7 base attack, or maybe, like, 4 base attack and a Slime Toes weapon, and then you 2-hit kill this, right? That's still 16 damage, and I don't think being on 7 base attack is, like, I think that's the point where this should be, not too punishing to kill, but you do get 3 base attack, and maybe that's the price you have to pay, right? That maybe it is balanced. It's just in the current game that we know, that's, like, even if this is a balanced card, it's just, like, the effect it has, like, is just too punishing, and that's Chronicle for you. But, like, without completely changing the card to something like gain 2 base attack and make it a lot smaller, or give it a completely different effect, like, I wanted to keep it the way it is, and I thought the only way to do that would be to, like, make it less punishing, so it does 2 less health damage, which I guess isn't very generous, but it also does that to your opponent, so I'm trying to keep it exactly the same flavor, but now it has, like, a better effect. Like, it's damaging your opponent. It fits into that strike archetype a lot more. Maybe it'll see some tournament play against, like, your opponent when you know that they will be having, like, a deck that can't punish you, and then you can play this super greedy deck. But I think currently, even in that deck, Unholy Cursebearer isn't good enough, considering, like, Ogre Chieftain is a thing, and yeah. So I think this is just much more appealing now. I still think it will be, like, not that playable. And I'm also a bit worried about buffing the strike archetype, but this is what we've been playtesting, and it hasn't been ridiculous so far. Mind you, we haven't had that much time to playtest, but that's how I think you would keep this card the same. Next up is Troll Shaman. It's not that good at the moment, but I haven't changed it because, if they introduce new spells, if that ever were to happen, then, you just can't print massive spells if you have, like, a really good Troll Shaman. So I think like it has to stay the same just from a future design space perspective. It should just go run rampant in the future. So it has to be like this. Stagger. I've given it a 2 gold reward. Now, that might be really pushing the card. Maybe a 1 gold reward is fine. But the point I was just trying to highlight was this on its own isn't good enough. I was trying to make it more like Abyssal Demon. Like, Morvaran has that card that exhausts you, gives you 2 gold, and removes exhaust from your next demon. And, like, I found the most interesting part of that card was just the 2 gold reward and the fact that you get exhausted when you kill that small 4/4 creature, because it made, like, going into Relisum's Balm, like, really efficient. And whenever you got, like, Abyssal Demon into Relisum's Balm off, that was insane. I'd often do it without a demon. In fact, there weren't even demons in my deck. The only reason I was running the Abyssal Demon was because I wanted the 2 gold and the exhaust. I thought I was actually putting that card in a really heavily focused AP sustain win in the final fight deck. And I don't think that's what they intended that card to be for, but I found that deck wasn't that good overall, largely because it's just not consistent enough. Like, a 2-card combo, you know, Abyssal Demon into Relisum's Balm, you need more than just one way to exhaust yourself. You'd need, like, a Greater Demon as well, I found. But that was, you know, that doesn't really fit in the deck very well. So the point I'm making is that Stagger without gold is certainly not very good. If Abyssal Demon, which gives you 2 gold, is not good, then Stagger without any gold would be no good. But the difference here is this card is a spell. It's not a 4/4 creature, so I guess, like, maybe you can't make it as rewarding. And also, I guess Ariane does have more 1 AP synergies, but I don't know, like, I never really respected the opinion of people who said, you know, Stagger's really good with Wind Surge, because no, it's not. Like, if you play Stagger and Wind Surge, it's a 2-card combo, which is janky in and of itself, like I just mentioned, but also, right, you now have to evaluate the Wind Surge as over 2 slots. It's now like instead of a 1 gold 6 damage, it's actually half a gold 3 damage per slot, which is quite bad. So I think Stagger just needs a bit of gold. Maybe 2 is like 1 too many. I think certainly 1 gold could go on this, but I think 2 would probably be fine as well, and that's what we've been playtesting. Yeah. Next up, Skeletal Mage. So moving back now to that theme of 1 base attack and giving all of the cards alternative effects. So Skeletal Mage actually never had... the only effect it had was if you were on 1 base attack. That's the only time it would do anything. But I've given it like a straight up, it always deals 4 damage, no matter what your base attack is. And then if you have 1 base attack, it deals 4 more damage, so it deals 8. Which is like a 2 damage improvement on the existing Skeletal Mage. But it also makes this card much more appealing in sort of a Dungeoneering style draft. But also, whilst we've been playtesting, we've also been doing like, you get 30 random cards and you have to play. So 15 class cards, 15 neutral cards, and then you go. So we needed like every card to be actually like reasonable, because that style is so, it's just not fun to play if the cards you have suck. But also we were doing like a sealed format, which is where you get like 60 cards and then you have to build a deck of 30 out of the 60 cards that you got. So it makes, I think this kind of change makes it much more interesting for those style of formats. I know they don't exist in Chronicle, but I guess that's why I wanted to give this an effect. And I think it kind of needs that, right? Like in Dungeoneering, it'd be so much more interesting. And I think it needed a little bit of pushing for that 1 AP style as well. Shield Dome. Gain armor equal to your hand size. Or sorry, half your hand size. I don't know, like, it doesn't need changing. Like, it's a fine card. But it just doesn't feel like very, very rewarding, if you know what I mean. Like, it says gain armor equal to half your hand size. So let's say you try to get your hand up really, really big. You know, you have 7 cards in hand, and now you get 3.5 armor. It just doesn't feel like you're being rewarded for, like, trying to get a big hand size. So, like, what I would have done is, like, maybe scrapped the rewards, or certainly made them less, but, like, change the text to just straight up gain armor equal to your hand size. So, like, it feels a bit, like, more rewarding for having a big hand size, and I thought that was where it ought to have been done. But, like, again, it doesn't need changing. It's a fine card, so I didn't change it. Ring of Kinship. I didn't change. I think this might actually be reasonable in that 1 AP style. It's also pretty good in, like, drafting and sealed. And we have changed a few other cards, like Weapon Poison. So Ring of Kinship is quite good with that. Yeah, we didn't change it. Revenant Knight. It could have Exhaust written on it. Honestly, it could. I wouldn't be upset if Jagex decided to write Exhaust on Rev Knight, but like I didn't want to write it on there because I really like how this defines that sort of Dark Strike Ariane style. I think it's one of the key cards in there. It's just a really fun card to play with, and yeah, it could have Exhaust, but at the same time, like I kind of like it not having it. So I personally didn't add it, but I wouldn't be upset if Jagex did. Now, Ravenous Snail. What the hell have you done here, Mr. Interjection? So what I've done is increased its armor and health reward by 2, so it now heals 4 more life in total, and it's now an aggressive creature, right? It's a ravenous snail. He's a hungry snail. He's looking for his next dinner. Of course, he's going to be quick to bite you, and I think that's flavorful, because currently ravenous snail is kind of boring in the sense that, like, it's just like lobster. It's just like cabbage. It's not unique in any way. But ravenous snail here, it now is, right? Like, you don't want to be taking 3 damage from your heal before you heal. Like, that's no good. But also, the more interesting thing is, it opens up some synergies. Ariane has Wise Old Man. She also has Entangle. Like, she just has ways to kill things before you even get to the creature. So if you can kill Ravenous Snail before you get to it, you don't take the 3 damage, because it's dead. And then you get a big 8 life reward, which is, I think, really pushing the cut. Maybe it's a bit too good with something like Kale. So maybe it could be a 3/3, and then maybe it'd be fine. But yeah, I think, like, this kind of synergizes with what Ariane is able to do. And it's not, like, boring anymore, right? Like, it's a different kind of card. It's a different heal. I also made it a beast because it's a snail, right? That kind of makes sense. Just a small change there. Skeletal Peon. I really like this card. I don't think it needs changing. It's really strong in Darkstrike, actually. Like, this card's insane. It's, like, basically better than Krasian Warrior in a lot of the sort of Ariane AP creature decks, because most of those decks don't care about gold at all, and this is so much smaller. It's so much safer to kill. Luna Spellbook. I think maybe the cards in the Ancient and Lunas could be changed. I haven't changed them, though, because they are quite good. I think along with the other changes we've made, they're probably going to get better as well, so I think it's fine. Something to keep an eye on, though. Lord Iban, I don't know where I'd begin if I was to change this. Like, I don't want to make this a smaller creature, because suddenly you get into the realms of it being really, really, like, uncharted territory. Who knows how good this would be. My instincts are not that good. Often swapping the attack and health of a creature just helps your opponent rather than hindering them. It could certainly be a smaller creature, but I don't know. I just don't want to mess with this. Lexicus Rune Rites. It's a fine card. It's actually really good. 4 gold and 3 card draw is quite nice. The problem is the random spells vary a lot. The thing I don't like is how you can get, like, those pre-paid for spells, like from the spellbooks and other places. That, like, I guess maybe that's the fun of it, but it does feel, like, really strong when that happens. Overall, though, I do really like the card. Lady Heffen. I didn't change this. I think it's going to be quite good in the future. 2 gold for that heal is actually really strong if you're running, like, a creature aggro deck, which I think will be a thing after this. Infernal Mage. So, remove 6 health from rival, but if you have 1 base attack, gain 3 gold. For those that don't know, Infernal Mage just used to have a straight-up 3 gold reward in the closed beta, and obviously that was ridiculously overpowered, so they removed the 3 gold reward, but I think if you're on 1 base attack, a 3 gold reward's perfectly fine. It's just when you're not on 1 base attack, like if you're building AP and then suddenly you can get 3 gold as well, because this isn't too hard to kill, it doesn't require that much investment at all, then a 3 gold reward's really, really, really strong. But if you're on 1 base attack, it requires quite a lot of investment to kill. You have to, like, you know, use a whole turn of prep with Enfeeble or Bunyip or something like that. So I think, like, pushing that archetype, giving it some gold for the Wise Old Man and some other spells is really valuable there. And I think, you know, if you're not on 1 base attack, this is a fine card. 310 for Dungeoneering, something like that. I did the same for Haunted Soul. So it says deal 5 damage. And it used to have a 2 gold reward. I think you could just straight up put a 1 gold reward on Haunted Soul and it would be like a fine card. Because I think Ariane does kind of struggle with some of the gold gaining. But she does have Clairvoyance now, so I was reluctant to actually put a gold reward on Haunted Soul. Instead, I think it should just give you 2 gold if you're on 1 base attack, right? There's still, if you can fight that on 1 base attack, you'll take a lot of damage from it, and Bunyip is still like a perfectly reasonable way to get into this. And it's also a much more appealing card now to kill with a Wise Old Man. I actually think, like, this is a pretty good card to kill with Wise Old Man if it gives you 2 gold. So I just think, like, again, this 1 base attack style needs a bit of a buff in terms of the gold available to it, so it can actually spend gold on things like Divine Storm and Death Lotus Assassin and whatever else it wants to spend gold on. You have to remember the 1 AP style, all of the creatures it kills, it has to set up the kill, which means it, like, kind of kills half as many creatures, so maybe they should be, like, twice as rewarding, something like that. Gnome Healer is a perfectly fine card. Fire Surge is a perfectly fine card as well, because your opponent knows, I can't stack too much armor, otherwise something bad will happen, and then, like, you can play around that. That's cool. Entangle. Basically the same card, but it costs a lot less. I did originally have it at 2 gold, but I thought it was a bit of a kick in the teeth to make Wise Old Man like 3 gold and this was 2 gold. So I decreased it to 1, and I think that's fine. Like, deal damage to your next creature equal to your hand size for 1 gold is not going to break the game. It requires setup in the form of Burnt Meat or Wizard Mind Bomb, and like, best case scenario, what are you going to kill? The only thing I can think of is Lava Dragon, but I'm okay with that, because, like, Lava Dragon isn't a damage card. Well, it does do 2 damage to your rival, but it's not like you're killing some huge creature that deals 10 damage. Okay, I guess there is Undead Dragon, but at that point, you deal 10 damage to that card, you still have to take 6 fighting it if you're on 2 base attack, you still have to set up the 10 hand size Entangle, which is, you know, now you're not drawing 3 on the next chapter. Most of the time, this is going to be dealing, like, 7, maybe around there. And I think 1 gold requires setup to deal 7. I think that's on the same power level as Crumble Undead, which I think is also going to be a fine card with all of the buffs to Undead that are in this particular Ariane patch. Alright, Enfeeble, similar to Entangle now that it costs 1, but this is a static effect that always happens. It's not dependent on your hand size, so it is much stronger because of that, but a fine card, and doesn't need changes because of that. Aileron. Add 1 health to all creatures in play. It always does that. All of the cards I've shown you always have that effect that always happens, and then the additional effect, if you're on 1 base attack, it adds 2 health instead, which, I don't know, killing a 5/3 on 1 base attack is kind of tough. You know, if you're going to put the setup in to do that, the earliest you'll be playing Aileron is slot 2, by which time it's, you know, ideally you want to put this in slot 1 if possible, because, you know, then you get to increase the maximum potential number of creatures. I think, though, people are going to be able to play around this. They'll see that you're on 1 base attack, and then Aileron could be a thing there. Again, though, a bit more support for that 1 base attack style, and I don't think, like, the card is that much better. In fact, it's basically the same card. It's just got this alternative effect. I'm not even sure you'd put this in the 1 AP Ariane deck, but it has that effect nonetheless. This is the wrong way around. I've thankfully not spoiled my change to Earth Blast, but Earthwave, a fine card. I really like this theme of I'm going all in here, and I'm going to try and finish you, or I basically lose the game. There's no other card in the game that quite has that sort of element, and I think it's really interesting. But perhaps the more interesting card, not Divine Storm, Earth Blast, that I have changed. Perhaps the most interesting change here, and one that is quite maybe people won't agree with this. I'm not sure, but spend 1 base attack and is otherwise identical. Deal damage to rival equal to the amount of support cards in your hand times 2. So the only change here is that, well, it costs 1 less, but also you have to spend a base attack, and I think that fits with the theme of Ariane. But more importantly, let's talk about Earth Blast and why it's so damn strong, right? You can chain 2 of these out, and that is absolutely monstrous. I think just 6 gold for Earth Blast, and, you know, the setup I think is rather minimal. Just 6 gold for 20 damage is absurd, and playing 2 of them I think needs to be more resource intensive. You need to collect more resources before you can do it, and I think base attack is a resource you should have to collect as well. It's also a way of signposting that you're getting closer to that Earth Blast. People are going to see, he has 3 base attack now, I should start thinking about that double Earth Blast. It sort of telegraphs it a bit better, and I really like that about it as well. But I think you should have to collect more resources. 6 gold just is too little, right? Like, even just 1 Earth Blast is insane, because you can have, you know, just 10 cards in hand, lay down 1 Earth Blast for 6 gold, and now you have 9 cards in hand, and then just press play and nuke them out for 18 damage. A lot of decks really struggle to play against Miracle Ariane because they have to deal with that really small amount of life sort of threshold where they can drop below. It's so small, and it's such a big threat, and it still will be a big threat, but if you do it, it's going to spend 1 base attack, and you're going to now have less resources for the second one. You need to stack your base attack up to get them both out, right? It has to be a very calculated decision now. Also, I really like the fact that it makes Penguin Sheep a lot worse in the deck, because, I don't know, Penguin Sheep I think shouldn't be in the Miracle Ariane deck. It's just, that deck has so much gold available to it, and it's a creature, I guess it shouldn't be in there, but it's so good that it is in there still. I don't know, if you have to spend your base attack on the Earth Blast, you can't spend it on the Penguin Sheep, and I think that's a good nerf to Miracle Ariane as well. Partly it's also why I made Earth Blast cheaper. So I guess Kaizaj Tournament will now be a staple in Miracle Ariane, and I guess also Grief Linza will be pretty good against it, which I'd really like to welcome that. I think this style of gameplay where you just nuke them out is really boring to play against, it's frustrating to play against, and it's just really cheesy. So I personally don't think this deck should represent a high power level, so I do think this is a good nerf. I mean, the other nerf you could do is making it deal damage equal to your hand size plus 5. Like, that's still pretty good. It actually improves Earth Blast when you have, like, 3 cards in hand, or a very low number of cards in hand, if you do that. But I think this is better because of the telegraphing. It nerfs Penguin Sheep and all of the other things that I mentioned. But moving on to Divine Storm. No change. Perfectly fine card, especially now that gold is getting buffed in Ariane, I suppose, when you're on 1 base attack. Crumble Undead, I mentioned that earlier. Crawling Hand is a very powerful card, but I really like it. Clairvoyance! We've increased his gold cost by 1. You might not necessarily have to do this if you do implement the Earth Blast change that I suggested, but I think if you just like look at it in a vacuum and just think how good is Clairvoyance on its own, I think it should cost 1, because gaining gold equal to your rival's base attack, as soon as they have like 4 base attack, this is absolutely insane. So I think just like no more free Clairvoyances, please. But I'm also absolutely okay with keeping it at 0 if that Earth Blast change or something similar was implemented. Next up, we do have Chaos Elemental, which I have been told, whilst I'm actually recording this video, has been changed. So at the start of when I made this, it was this. But in the game right now, if you open up the game, it's Chaos Elemental is actually now a 5 attack, 12 health creature with a 4 gold reward, with the effect of reduce the cost of your next support and the health of your next creature by the attack of this creature. So if you kill the Chaos Elemental without enfeebling it, so if you just kill it vanilla straight up, you're on 6 base attack or 6 total attack and you 2-hit kill it, whatever, then it's going to make your next creature have 5 less health and your next support cost 5 less, which is actually pretty good given that it comes with a 4 gold reward. I actually think this is a really nice change. I really like this Chaos Elemental, but the change I was putting in, I was trying to keep it as similar as possible to what it already was in the game. I feel like it's... I don't want to change the cards too much. I want to, like, protect what Jagex kind of envisioned the game being, and who am I to, like, change that too much? So, yeah, that's what I had in mind. Basically, what I did is I thought this 4 gold reward is useless. I'm going to give it a 6 life reward, and I preserved the remove weapon and all armor from rival, even though I hate these kind of ridiculous effects that, you know, completely hard counters things. But I think if you're going to have that in the game, it belongs on Chaos Elemental because it's so flavorful from RuneScape. This represents Chaos Elemental so well in RuneScape. But I thought, all right, we'll just give it a 6 life reward, which is probably about the same as 4 gold, but maybe it's better because you're likely to play this in that final fight slot, right, just before Chapter 5, just before the final fight on Chapter 5 slot 4. And I think it's okay for Ariane to have an effect like this because she's not very good at stacking armor and going to the final fight. That's definitely, you know, Morvaran, Raptor, and Veneskula has, like, some ways to increase her max life total. That's not her domain at all, it's other players. So I think if you want to build that sort of AP sustainment in the final fight, Ariane, Chaos Elemental is, like, she's the only class that can have a card like this because it levels the playing field a bit. But I quite like the Jagex change, but this is what I suggested. And I guess from now on, whilst I'm recording this, I'll have to say what the actual changes are. But yeah, pretty cool. Bind. So effectively just a 1 gold cost reduction. And that's what I've done to all of the gold-based strikes. I've reduced their cost by 1. But what I've also done is, instead of dealing 1 damage, it now says remove 1 health from rival. I thought that's just a flavor change, and I think that fits better with RuneScape, because in RuneScape, magic spells often like do extra damage to people in armor. I just think it's more of a flavorful change. It's not really like a change. It's not needed at all. It's just an interesting thing. But yeah, just the main thing is the 1 gold cost reduction. Before you read my change, stop, because Banshee is now different. It's been changed by Jagex. It's currently in the game right now. It says, well, it's reduced its stats by 1/1, so it's now a 3/3. The gold reward remains, and the effect has changed from remove 1 attack to remove 2 attack, and 1 health from all your creatures in play. I really like this. It makes it a lot more playable, because 3/3 means you can just KGP agent and then kill it, right? Like, that's so much better already. And it's more effective as well, remove 2 attack, which actually really combos quite nicely with Enfeeble and Bunyip, and now Chaos Elemental. It combos with that effect as well. So you can start moving into things like Undead Dragon a lot better, and like that's a whole Undead deck. So I think the Jagex change is quite good, and I approve of this very well. But my change, I think, I'm not sure if it's better. It's better if you're on 1 base attack, but I was just continuing the theme there. Remove 1/1 from all your creatures in play, like normal, And if you have 1 base attack, remove 1/1 from all your creatures in your hand and deck. So it's permanent. And I think that's a really interesting change for a 1 AP deck. I don't think their game engine actually supports that, but, you know, we're playing in tabletop, so it doesn't really matter what we rate on the cards. And I think that's, well, it's clearly better if you're on 1 base attack, but I approve of the Jagex change as well. I did mean to leave the 1 gold on Banshee. That seems to have come off by mistake. Next up, we have Archmage Cedrador, which is a fine card. Anku, this has also changed, so I think we'll go over my change first. So what I've done is, well, it has the same effect, remove 4 health from both legends. If you have 1 base attack, remove 4 more health from both legends. So just improving it when you're on 1 base, it's just stronger there. I've also swapped the attack and durability of the weapon that it rewards. And I think maybe that could be a 4-1 weapon, but 4-2 because I wanted to keep the total attack and durability if you added them together the same. But the 4-2 weapon, the idea there was if you're on 1 base attack, you get the 4-2 weapon. You're now on 5 base attack, sorry, 5 total attack, and now you can slam things like Skelly Mage, Haunted Soul, and you could 2-hit kill an Infernal Mage if you wanted to. So I really wanted to add that kind of synergy there. But I do appreciate that weapon might be a bit too strong. But we were playtesting it. And initially I thought it would be too strong, but I actually just don't think it is. I think it's fine. Especially since you'll be taking 8 damage from the Anku effect itself. Now, Jagex have changed it in a different way. I quite like their change too, but they're going more for the, I'm going to put this in a 3-attack deck, I suppose. Basically, aggro Ariane, right? Not the 1 AP deck, but you want to be able to kill this. Maybe you're killing this in 2 hits, or maybe you do get a weapon and you kill this in 1 hit. But the idea is that it deals damage, health damage. I assume that's to your opponent. I don't think it'll be to you. I haven't checked, though, to be honest. But, and then you also get a 2 gold reward, which is, damage and gold in the same slot is actually very valuable. It's a bit like how Haunted Soul was really good. It certainly isn't as good as old Haunted Soul, but that card really was quite strong. So that's fine. But which change do I prefer? I think this Anku is the stronger Anku, and I'm going to be biased towards my Anku. But that's because I'm pushing this 1 base attack theme. That's probably the only reason. Also, I do think if this were the card, it would be stronger. But then, I guess that's in the context of all of my other changes to cards that have 1 base attack. Animated Book is certainly a fine card. Definitely not as strong as Penguin Sheep, but that card is particularly strong. Ancient Spellbook, same like I mentioned for Lunar Spellbook earlier. Alchemy. Alchemy is a fine card as well. And we are finished. So that took much longer than I thought it would. So I was, as I mentioned at the beginning of the video, saying this is going to be one hell of a video. But I think actually I'm going to split it up again. But I will start work on the next one as soon as I finish this one. So you can probably expect that later today. Thank you very much for watching. Do leave a like if you thought it was interesting. And I am really, really interested to see what other people think. So yeah, hopefully put across some good points. And we'll see what you and Jagex think.